Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are live on Zoom today for the Vaccine Summit, Equitable Distribution and Safety, jointly hosted by the International Chamber of Commerce Philippines, the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and the International Chamber of Commerce. This virtual summit aims to shed light on pressing concerns about the COVID-19 vaccines and vaccination in the Philippines. My name is Mary Grace Koo from Chinoy TV. And on behalf of the Vaccine Summit organizers, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us here today, for being one of the hundreds of attendees eager to stay informed about the country's efforts in fighting COVID-19. In light of safety restrictions, we're doing the entire summit online. Not just here on Zoom, we're also being broadcasted real-time on Chinoy TV's official Facebook and YouTube page. That being said, you're welcome to share this video on social media so we can reach as many people as possible. We've got a great lineup of speakers and resource persons coming from relevant fields in both the government and private sector in the country. They will impart their insights on COVID-19 vaccines, particularly on the subject of their equitable distribution and safety. On this note, please allow me to introduce you to the man who will be spearheading this afternoon's discussion. He is the Director for Agriculture and Fishery and Vice Chair for Asia and ASEAN Affairs of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He is also the Director and Treasurer of the International Chamber of Commerce Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, your Vaccine Summit host and moderator, please welcome Mr. Roberto Bobby Amores.
Good afternoon to all of you. I'm very honored to be a part of the Vaccine Summit as your host and moderator. And I look forward to having a meaningful exchange with our esteemed panelists later on in the program. Without further ado, allow me to introduce the person behind this important event. A respected leader in the business community, ASEAN industrial engineer, and a pillar in the Philippine Chamber movement. He was a special envoy for trade and investments under former President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. To formally commence the Vaccine Summit, please give a warm virtual welcome to the Chairman Emeritus of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry and founding Chairman of the International Chamber of Commerce Philippines. Let's welcome Ambassador Francis Chua.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen from all over the world. Today's summit, entitled Vaccine Summit, Equitable Distribution and Safety, together with Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the International Chamber of Commerce, and the International Chamber of Commerce Philippines, Federation of Filipino-Chinese Chamber of Commerce and Industry, we jointly welcome all of you. Indeed, the COVID-19 outbreak has taken the whole world by surprise. It has led to a dramatic loss of human life and presents an unprecedented challenge to public health. The economic and social disruption caused by the pandemic is devastating. Millions of enterprises face an unprecedented threat. Nearly half of the world's 3.3 billion global workforce are at risk of losing their livelihood. While mankind is still suffering from this pandemic, the arrival of COVID-19 vaccines represents some light at the end of the tunnel. Thanks to the kind donation from China, through the endless effort from His Excellency Ambassador Huang Xilian, the first batch of vaccine arrived in the Philippines on February 28. Now we have millions of Sinovac in the Philippines. The following day, the country kicked off its vaccination program and the succeeding deliveries follows. AstraZeneca vaccines were also received by March. The availability of vaccines for developing countries have become a big global challenge. Still, some ponder if these vaccines are really effective or not. These are a very serious reason why we have this summit. Jointly, we provide a platform to discuss the issues on acquisition, deliveries, and distributions of vaccines. Our program will be divided into two parts. First, we have message from government, diplomatic, corps, and international organizations, led by our Honorable Mayor of Manila, the Honorable Francisco Isco Domogoso, our very chief implementer, Vaccine Czar, Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr., Chinese Ambassador, His Excellency Ambassador Huang Xilian, Russian Ambassador, His Excellency Ambassador Marat Pavlov, Senior Human Development Specialist, Global Practice on Health, Nutrition, and Population of World Bank Group, Dr. Satayup. The second part is a panel discussion on the insights from the private sector, vaccine importers, and medical experts like the Honorable Joy Concepcion and my good friend, Dr. Samuel Ang, and other BBIP to be introduced properly later. Thank you all so much for devoting your precious time with us. Keep safe, stay healthy always.
Bobby, you're muted.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Francis Chua. Also to give his opening message is a man highly involved in property development and technology business. He founded the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry Center for Innovation, which aims to train young individuals in high technology and help develop the country's innovation ecosystem. And he is also the founding partner of Double Dragon Meridian Park Development Corporation. Please give a warm welcome to the President, the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and concurrent President of the International Chamber of Commerce, Philippines. Let us welcome Ambassador Benedicto V. Yujuico.
Thank you, Bobby. Excellencies, with your indulgence, please allow me to dispense. Excellencies, with your indulgence, please allow me to dispense noting the names of our very distinguished speakers this afternoon. I am honored for this opportunity to meet all of you in today's Vaccine Summit to discuss equitable distribution and safety. The Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, together with the International Chamber of Commerce and the International Chamber of Commerce Philippines, are hopeful that this summit shall generate focused discussions towards greater understanding on the issues confronting the distribution and safety of COVID-19 vaccines in the Philippines. My sincerest gratitude to Ambassador Francis Chua, Mr. John Denton, colleagues in PCCI, ICCP, and to all of our resource speakers from the government, diplomatic corps, private sector, and international organizations for making this summit possible. The PCCI, together with the Philippine business community, have consistently called for the speeding up of the procurement process and rollout of vaccines to ensure the safety of the citizenry, boosting of consumer confidence, and for the recovery of our economy. Since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, PCCI, our local chambers, and partner organizations and members have been tirelessly working in supporting businesses and communities through various initiatives and efforts at the national, regional, and local levels to help our businesses survive these difficult times. We will continue to be partners of government and will do whatever is necessary until such time that this virus has been overcome and everyone can return to normal life. We have an impressive lineup of resource speakers today. I am confident that today's event shall be a productive and insightful one for all. Thank you, good afternoon, and stay safe.
Thank you, Ambassador Yujuico. Now, to further set the tone for the Vaccine Summit, I am also very honored to welcome a global business leader, international advisor on policy, and legal expert on international trade and investment. He is a board member of the United Nations Global Compact and co-chair of the B20 Finance and Infrastructure Task Force. To tell us about the International Chamber of Commerce's contribution to international vaccine procurement and distribution, here is the Chamber's Secretary General, Mr. John Denton. Mr. Denton, please.
Thank you very much, Roberto, and a big shout out to Francis and to Benedicto, two of the lions of the private sector in Asia Pacific. I'm so pleased to be with you, with all my good friends in the Philippines today, and with so many members of the diplomatic community, because vaccine distribution is ultimately an international challenge that will require global participation and global cooperation and global collaboration, and above all, leadership in a way that we have not yet observed in the global world. Let me begin by saying, ensuring a truly global, equitable distribution of vaccines is ICC's #1 priority. Why? Because ICC is a purpose-led institution. Our mission is to enable business to secure peace, prosperity, and opportunity for all. And there is nothing worse than a pandemic for enabling peace amongst our citizens, nothing worse than a pandemic for prosperity, and nothing worse than a pandemic for inhibiting our capacity to deliver opportunity for all. So if we are to grow the economy, enable global trade, and advance the cause of peace and security for our citizens, we must react and must resolve this pandemic as quickly and fairly as possible. And this fundamentally requires equitable access to vaccines everywhere in the world, in the Philippines, in Southeast Asia, and to our brothers and sisters in India and other parts of the world currently overwhelmed by the virus, but also much further abroad, in Africa, in Latin America, in small island states everywhere, because no one is safe until everyone is safe. And because the longer COVID-19 circulates anywhere in the world, as we are seeing, the greater the chances of new variants emerging and reinfecting our societies. I would like to offer some brief reflections based on my experience over the last year leading the ICC. First of all, I've been working very closely with the WHO Director General, Dr. Tedros. And as the private sector representative, I'm proud to serve on the ACT, or the ACT Accelerator Facilitation Council, which is looking into and actually enabling equitable distribution. And in my discussions most recently with the WTO Director General, and actually with the Italian G20 presidency, and of course, based on countless interactions with the business community all over the world, allow me to make 3 points. First, there are reasons for optimism, that there is light at the end of the tunnel. The innovation of the private sector can never be underestimated, and the innovation of the private sector has led to scientific advances in record time. Let's not forget the speed with which these vaccines have been delivered. While it's hard to fathom now, the world has significantly more tools available to fight COVID-19. There are new tests, there are new treatments, there are new vaccines, and there's knowledge now about which non-pharmaceutical interventions work and which do not. If we think back to just 1 year ago, the world is doing a lot better than experts predicted in terms of scaling production. And we are now on track to manufacture something like almost 10 billion doses this year. We've created COVAX, which is part of the Accelerator A project, a mechanism that would vaccinate 20% of the world's population by the end of 2021, of which the Philippines is a beneficiary. In theory, I say, this will be enough to achieve global herd immunity. But, and this is my second point, there is a big difference between theory and practice. Despite progress, there are major downside risks to the world ending this pandemic anytime soon. Most insidious is vaccine nationalism, that creeping infection that we're seeing around the globe. Rich countries jumping the queue, hoarding supplies, and racing to vaccinate their own populations ahead of others. Not only is this mean-spirited and poorly directed, but it is an economically suicidal act. It's an act of economic self-harm by those countries. A study which the ICC had commissioned and which I've taken to the G20, which I've taken to the WHO, taken to the WTO, and taken to the global community, and taken to finance ministers. This shows that the cost to the global economy of vaccine nationalism would be almost $9 trillion this year alone. And you know, my friends, more than half of that will actually be borne by developed countries. That's why I call vaccine nationalism an act of economic self-harm. The governments may have created COVAX, but they have not yet fully put their money behind this initiative. We are still short by $20 billion. And I do call on the Filipino business community to stand up and put pressure wherever you can on governments at the local level and globally to actually fully fund the COVAX facility. Added to this are significant challenges to the supply chain itself. Manufacturers are struggling to get the raw materials, active ingredients, enzymes, lipids, and glass vials required to produce vaccines at the scale required. And finally, the use of export bans and other trade barriers have complicated distribution unnecessarily, broken down relations of trust between nations, and prevented poor countries from vaccinating even to a minor degree. And I think you are seeing that in the Philippines, and we're certainly seeing that at the moment in India. My third point is that in the spirit of optimism, we can overcome these barriers through leadership, public-private sector collaboration, and much greater coordination. ICC, as the World Business Organization, has long been calling for the full funding of COVAX and for governments to see it as an investment, not a donation. It's in their interest to fully fund COVAX. We can do so much more to strengthen the global vaccine supply chain, including by establishing a global clearinghouse, which is what the ICC has been calling for, to actually quickly identify and address bottlenecks to the supply chain, both of creating the vaccines and distributing them. We can establish a global matchmaking service, another element of the ICC's global coordination and global clearinghouse, to link businesses with latent capacity. And there are at least 200 generic manufacturers around the world ready, willing, and able to produce essential medicines now in the fight against COVID. We must create a collective vision for long-term holistic financing of pandemic preparedness that goes beyond 2021. And governments can reduce legal barriers to the rollout of vaccines, removing export restrictions, streamlining customs procedures, and permanently abolishing tariffs on pharmaceutical medical goods. The ICC's concept of a global clearinghouse, which enables greater transparency on the supply chain, matchmaking at a global level, and a new form and a new way of actually enabling financing for long-term investment in creating the very innovations we need to fight pandemics, is a critical next step. And I call on the Filipino business community to stand up and support us on this. And I also call on you to put pressure wherever you can on governments to remove these export restrictions, that get in the way of getting the services and the supplies that we need to the Philippines and elsewhere. I'm speaking with the WTO Director General now about establishing this global clearinghouse as a system that would achieve all these outcomes. And I hope that the Philippines and other governments on this call may well join us in these efforts. Finally, let me conclude by offering my condolences to the many, many Filipinos who have lost their lives or their loved ones to COVID-19. Together with the right policies and the right spirit of collaboration and solidarity, global bayanihan, if you will, we can quickly bring an end to this pandemic, restore economic growth, revitalize global trade, and bring peace to our citizens. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this morning.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. John Denton, for that insightful speech. Thank you very much. Now, as we get ready for the first part of the Vaccine Summit, lastly, we'll be hearing from one of the Philippines' most notable business leaders. He's the man behind the multi-awarded Sterling Paper brand and SL Agritech, the leading producer of hybrid rice in the Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome the President of the Federation of Filipino-Chinese Chambers of Commerce and Industry Incorporated, Dr. Henry Lim Bonliong.
Thank you. To our distinguished guests, our summit participants, friends, ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant afternoon to all of you. On behalf of our organization, the Federation of Filipino-Chinese Chamber of Commerce and Industry Incorporated, I am pleased to extend our warmest greetings to the guests and participants of this Vaccine Summit. I would like to thank ICC Philippines, led by my compadre, my batchmates in UP Engineering, Ambassador Francis Chua, and PCCI for inviting us to share our Federation's perspective on the vaccination program. Early this week, the Philippines' total COVID cases have reached more than 1 million. We also saw the peak of its surge this month. With the emergence of more contagious virus variants, it is important that we address the health problems of the pandemic soonest. We agree with our medical experts' view that vaccines are the best long-term solution. Vaccines save lives. It offers us hope. It is necessary to keep the rates of diseases low. We can look at Israel, for example, which has the highest vaccination rate in the world. More than 55% of its 9.3 million populations are already vaccinated. Their cases have dropped, and the schools and businesses have reopened. In support of our government's national COVID-19 vaccination program, our Federation has acquired 500,000 doses of Sinovac through a tripartite agreement with the government led by Secretary Charlie Galvez and IP Biotech. These civic projects initiated by our federation with the support of His Excellency Ambassador Wang Xilian of the People's Republic of China aims to protect our senior citizens and economic frontliners, entrepreneurs and employees who are our family breadwinners. Through the vaccination, we are not only protecting them, but we are also protecting their families, their senior parents, their young children, and our local communities nationwide. In facing the challenge of growing public demand and limited vaccine supply, we appeal to everybody to support the government's vaccination program, which is most important for a faster economic recovery. Amidst COVID-19, our local businesses are trying to adapt and are doing their best to continue business operations. We need to recover the millions of jobs that we lost, recover consumption curbed by the pandemic, and restore our economic growth. The sooner vaccination is carried out throughout the country, the sooner we can revive our economic confidence, rebuild businesses, and further open up the economy. COVID-19 is an unprecedented global challenge that calls for multi-sectoral responses. Once more, our federation reiterates its commitment as a steadfast partner of the government and our people as we rise up as one nation in overcoming this pandemic. Let's keep each other safe, and let's keep the faith, and let's keep moving forward. Thank you again, and a pleasant good afternoon to everybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Henry Lim Bonlyong. Now, as the COVID-19 pandemic continues to affect countries to varying degrees, countless stakeholders have been doing their part, not just in ensuring people's immediate health and safety, but in developing, distributing, and administering cures to COVID-19 vaccination programs. In the first part of the Vaccine Summit, resource speakers representing the government, the diplomatic corps, and international organizations will impart their insights on COVID-19 vaccines and vaccination in the Philippines. First to speak on the critical role of local governments in the Philippines in terms of ensuring their communities' access to vaccines, we have none other than one of the outstanding local chief executives of the National Capital Region, who is spearheading Manila's local COVID-19 vaccination efforts. Please put your virtual hands together for Manila City Mayor, the Honorable Francisco Dumagoso, better known as Mayor Isko Moreno. Mayor Isko.
Hi, thank you, Sir Bobby. Kamusta ka? Good to see you. You're healthy, alive, and kicking. I'm happy to see you. And to all our friends here, especially to Secretary Galvez, our partner in the local government unit in deploying as soon as possible every available vaccine that will land in our country through the help of Secretary Galvez. And of course, our friend Ambassador Wang of the Chinese Embassy, and to His Excellency also, Ambassador Parat Pavlov, and Dr. Sutayut or Sonoprasop. I hope I pronounce it right. I'm sorry. And si Ambassador Francis, and Ambassador Benedicto, Mr. John Denton, and Dr. Henry Lim Liong. At saka si Serge, nakita ko si Serge kanina. Sir Serge, kamusta ka dyan? Oh. Anyway, to all other distinguished guests in today's forum, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. One, we are happy to say we have a good problem in the city. A good problem in a way that, unlike before, survey shows that there is a hesitation in vaccination. And our good problem is that there is high demand now of people getting vaccinated. And we are very fortunate, one, to Secretary Galvez and President Duterte. The city of Manila is one of the beneficiaries of Sinovac vaccine and AstraZeneca. No? And out of X numbers of vaccine arrived in the country, so far the city of Manila got 74,000 vaccine deployed in the city. And 80% of that is Sinovac. And about 20% of that is AstraZeneca. But the total vaccinated in the city, combined with the effort of the national government, hospital, and private hospital, we have about 114,000, more or less. And as we speak today, we have fully vaccinated. So when we say that, it's double dose or second dose already with regard to Sinovac. About 15,291 of 74,000. And from the national government and local government and private hospital, about 4,186. So all in all, we have about 20,000 fully protected. And we do believe, as you have been saying, kanina pa ako nakikinig sa inyo, vaccination is the solution. That's what we believe. No? Because I do believe that the best way to address this pandemic of ours is to really vaccinate as many people as possible and as fast as possible. So to generate consumer confidence and stability and going back to hopefully what we call the new normal, ASAP, because we cannot sustain on spending, continue to spend without earning. I know a lot of businesses were shut down, especially the small one who are gravely affected, and it's hurting our medium and large corporation also, and I'm grateful to them. They're trying to survive and they're trying to sustain whatever is left, and thank you for that. Because of that, we continue to provide jobs and opportunity for our people. Then again, rest assured that in city of Manila, our policy is very simple in vaccination. We simplified the deployment without violating IATF rule with regard to priority listing. When we say simplified, is those people who live in the city and work in the city every day will have an opportunity to get vaccinated. So living and working, as long as you fall under the category A1.1 to A1.7, A2, and A3. So that's why I can, honestly say and thank Manila Health Department for a swift, efficient deployment of every drops available vaccine or vials for that matter And thank you to Chinese government for helping the country. And we are one of the beneficiary of those donations and accommodating the country through the effort of Secretary Galvez. And we will continue to do so. In fact, we went beyond the requirement, including our bedridden individuals in their respective homes are getting vaccinated by the city. And tomorrow, in celebration of Labor Day, the national government created a plan or a gift to our OFW and workers. And Manila will deploy, as a matter of gift to our workers tomorrow during Labor Day for some of the members of the A4, which is, I think, hopefully in a good day, we can continue to accelerate our deployment following priority list made by DOAs or NTF. But as long as there's vaccine, we will vaccinate. Not a lull moment, or sort of saying rest, including holidays, Saturdays. Tomorrow we have another second dose. About 8,457 will receive second dose tomorrow. And about 4,800 will receive first dose of all Sinovac tomorrow. So because we received last night, so we implement even on a Saturday, Sunday, including holidays. Because COVID-19 is not resting, so we should not be resting also. Vaccination should be faster than infection. That's what we believe. So then again, thank you for this opportunity. Rest assured that your city is with you. At the very least, in the city of Manila, we're putting things in right perspective. And we will be there for you along the way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
Oh, this
Isko
is
Moreno.
this is a video of ongoing Manila COVID-19 field hospital, because I really feel bad for our fellow in India, no? The people of India. And I think there's a lot to learn about it. And the city of Manila continue to be at least ahead in terms of numbers of infection comparatively to our what we call the capacity to help in a full cycle, whether quarantine, testing, hospital bed capacity, equipment, and all other things. Now we're building 336 COVID bed facility for mild and moderate. And after that, we're going to build 60 bed ICU-like setting in our hospital. For the next 5 months, if there will be surge, hopefully it will not come, or maybe December, and hopefully it will not come. But we continue to prepare ourselves. This idea of field hospital, I have to give credit to China when we saw that they did it in China and they did it in Italy. So if they can do it, Filipino can do it also. And hopefully, in God's will, it will build in 60 days. We will try. We will try to achieve. And this will address mild and moderate, so that we can concentrate in addressing severe and critical in a hospital setting. So it's a complete look in the city. I just shared you the video. Thank you, Chinoy TV, for sharing that is a 4:30 video. It's been about a week now. That Burnham Green in Luneta. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mayor Isko Moreno. Indeed, Manila has been widely recognized as a model in vaccine rollout. Up next, let us delve into the status of the national COVID-19 vaccination program and implementation plan, especially on the procurement, delivery, and target alternative sources of vaccines. We have the chief implementer and vaccine czar of the Philippine National Task Force against COVID-19, who also served as the 50th Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Let us welcome General Carlito Galvez. General Galvez, please.
To our distinguished guests, good afternoon. My courtesies to all the officers and members of the Philippine Chambers of Commerce and Industries, headed by Ambassador Francis Chua and Ambassador Benedicto Yujuico. I am deeply honored to be invited in this summit, which provides the government and the private sector a venue to engage each other and discuss developments in the ongoing implementation of the National Immunization Program. I thank the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, as well as the International Chambers of Commerce Philippines, headed by Mr. John W.S. Denton, for this opportunity to share with you the strategies that we have employed to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 as we revive the nation's economy. The country's 3-year vaccination plan is guided by the President Rodrigo Roas Duterte's policy direction to inoculate all Filipinos for free using safe and effective vaccines. The government remains committed to its goal of inoculating 70 million Filipinos by year-end. As we continue to recalibrate our vaccination strategy due to the supply constraints and ongoing surge in COVID-19 cases, we are very confident that the country will be able to achieve herd containment within this year with the help of the private sector, with the inoculation of 50 to 70 million Filipinos. As of today, we have completed contracts with 5 vaccine manufacturers, which will provide the country with much stable supply of anti-COVID jabs for this year. With support coming from the private sector and the local government units, especially Mayor Yorme, the Philippines was able to gain access to larger vaccine volumes at a lower price. For this year, our country is expecting the arrival of at least 148 million doses from the 7 manufacturers in our vaccine portfolio. And we thank Ambassador Wansilian to be the first who made this dream come true by having more or less 4.5 million vaccine already coming in to the country. This figure still does not include the vaccine supplies coming from the COVAX facility, which has committed doses equivalent to 20% of our country's population, or more or less 22 million. The bulk of these COVID-19 vaccines will be arriving by mid-year and would significantly scale up the implementation of our national immunization program. Likewise, with the arrival of a steady supply of vaccines and the simultaneous vaccination of priority groups A1, A2, and A3, we expect our vaccination rate to grow exponentially. Yesterday, we have received 500,000 Sinovac vaccines from China, which comprise the 25 million vaccines that we have ordered from Sinovac. And tomorrow, 15,000 of the pilot project of Gamaleya Sputnik will be coming also. I would like to thank His Excellency Wang Xilian, Ambassador of People's Republic of China, and also His Excellency Marit I. Pavlov, Ambassador of Russian Federation, for being the first countries to help in this humanitarian disaster. We will not forget you, Mr. Ambassadors, and the Filipino government and the Filipino people will always be grateful to your kindness and sincere, compassionate help to us. As of April 29, we have already vaccinated more than 1.8 million Filipinos with 1,880,975 million jabs administered to our healthcare workers, senior citizens, and people with comorbidities. By June, we shall start vaccinating our government and economic frontliners, as well as members of the indigent population. As a start, we will giving us our workers during the time of the Labor's Day on May 1, 5,000 vaccines for their contribution to the economy. And when we have sufficient vaccine doses in inventory by August, we shall begin vaccinating the general population. And as part of our effort in preparing for the long haul, we are currently focused on implementing our containment strategy. Apart from increasing the vaccination rate, we have intensified our prevent, detect, isolate, treat, and reintegrate efforts and building our pandemic resilience by increasing the number of COVID-19 hospital beds and reinforcing manpower in high-risk areas. Next year, we will implement our pandemic exit strategy to achieve vaccine security. We will partner with domestic and international pharmaceutical companies to develop our nation's capacity to manufacture our own vaccines. And by 2023, we envision to have vaccine self-sufficiency with the modernization and integration of our healthcare system. Again, let me thank the members of the PCCI, ICCP, and the various LGUs for partnering with the national government and continuously working with us during this difficult period. We are looking forward to establishing more partnership with the private sector, not just in our COVID-19 response effort, but in the implementation of other measures that will allow our country to recover faster and build back better. Maraming salamat po at magandang hapong muli sa ating lahat.
Thank you very much, General Galvez. We highly appreciate and congratulate you for being able to secure significant amounts of vaccines needed by our country. Congratulations po, General Galvez. With several COVID-19 vaccines available, one that's been proven to have a high efficacy against severe cases of COVID-19 is China's Sinovac, which is among those currently being procured by the Philippines. How much do you know about its development and the Chinese government supply commitment to the Philippines? To tell us those details, we are very honored to have the Ambassador of the People's Republic of China to the Republic of the Philippines, His Excellency Ambassador Huang Xilian. Excellency.
Good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished guests, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I'm deeply honored to attend this summit. I would like to begin by thanking the Philippine International Chamber of Commerce and the Philippine Chamber of Commerce Industry for organizing this timely event. The COVID-19 pandemic is still raging the world. Fighting against the pandemic remains the most urgent task for the international community. Vaccine is the fundamental means to control the spread of pandemic and save lives. President Xi Jinping solemnly declared that COVID-19 vaccines, once developed and deployed by China, will be made global public goods. This will be China's contribution to ensuring vaccine accessibility and affordability in developing countries. China honors its words with actions, pooling its resources and sparing no efforts to promote vaccine research and development in China, 5 COVID-19 vaccines have got conditional market approval or emergency use permits. With more than 240 million doses have been administered. China plans to vaccinate 560 million people with 1.1 billion doses by the end of July. So far, more than 80 countries have authorized the use of Chinese vaccines. And Chinese vaccine safety and effectiveness earned recognition across the world. Despite domestic supply shortage, China has provided vaccines to 80 developing countries and 3 international organizations in urgent need, and exported vaccines to over 40 countries. China has also actively responded to the appeal of the United Nations and WHO. China has joined WHO-backed vaccine program COVAX, under which we have pledged to provide an initial 10 million doses of vaccines and prioritize needs of developing countries, committed to fair global distribution of vaccines. As coronavirus variants emerge frequently, mass vaccination becomes a race against time. Only being safe, effective, and accessible can be a vaccine called a good product. The international community must join hands to overcome difficulties and eliminate the vaccine divide. Since the outbreak of the COVID-19, China has donated 1 million doses of vaccine to the Philippines and prioritized vaccine export to this country. So far, 3.5 million doses of Chinese vaccine have arrived in this country, and another 2 million procured by the Philippine government will arrive soon in May. We are delighted to know that the Russian vaccine will also arrive in Manila soon to help the Philippines fight against the pandemic. Certain vaccine producing countries hoard large amounts of vaccines far beyond their real needs. They also prohibit the export of raw materials for vaccine production, resulting in serious shortage of vaccines in developing countries. Vaccine nationalism, contrary to international fairness and justice, undermines international community's hard work to fight against the pandemic. Real gold can withstand the test of fire. China's test kits and PPEs withstood doubts and suspicion and proved to safeguard Philippines' fight against COVID-19 since last year. This year, doubts and even smear also came before and when Chinese vaccines arrived in the Philippines. Now, the Chinese vaccines have become the major source of Philippines' vaccination. I was especially impressed by Secretary General Galvez and his team for their very professional dedication and transparency in the process of purchasing Chinese vaccines. Facing the pandemic, it is top priority for both of our two countries and people to work together to defeat the pandemic and bring the economy and the people's life to normal. China and the Philippines are neighbors, and that cannot be moved away. For neighbors, it is normal to have differences. What matters is that we handle them in a mature and constructive way. Let me say again, what matters is that we handle them in a mature and constructive manner. This serves the mutual benefits of our two countries and meets the common aspiration of the two peoples. China always values promise and integrity. We Chinese people always mean what we say And we also firmly believe that a friend in need is a friend indeed, and time will tell. The pandemic is test for friendship. Some countries were looking on Philippines' vaccine insecurity with indifference, but try to sow discord by taking advantage of the differences between China and the Philippines. We should stay alert. Together, tougher the time is, wider our eyes open. We should eventually know who the real friends and reliable partners are. Success belongs to those who persevere. I believe that through solidarity and mutual assistance, we will prevail over the pandemic and embrace a brighter future. I also believe that China-Philippines friendship and cooperation will withstand the test of time. I wish this summit a great success. And thank you all, and stay safe.
Thank you, Ambassador Huang Xinliang. In the lineup of countries with the most notable efforts to fight COVID-19, Russia has developed its own vaccine that's now being embraced by a number of countries. Here to discuss the Russian Federation's contribution to global vaccine efforts and supply, commitment to the Philippines, let us all welcome the Ambassador of the Russian Federation to the Republic of the Philippines, His Excellency Ambassador Marat Pavlov. Excellency Pavlov.
Dear friends, colleagues, and partners, first of all, I would like to thank the organizer of this event for inviting me to the Vaccine Summit. For me, the summit is a conference of the highest level officials, and therefore, the Vaccine Summit is aimed to achieving the highest goal by exchanging views on best practices on containing the COVID-19. In this regard, I'd like to give you a brief description of my country's role in this area. When the new coronavirus disease broke out last year, the Russian government assumed that the only solution to this problem is the creation of own vaccine and rolling out a mass vaccination to achieve a herd immunity. Sputnik V is the first officially registered COVID-19 vaccine. Was developed by the scientists of the Gamaleya Medical Center. The vaccine is based on human adenovirus vector technology. The technology has been widely used for more than 40 years in making drugs and vaccine, so it is absolutely safe. Sputnik V showed efficacy of 97.6%. It's a new figure. There is no adverse side effects apart from typical post-vaccination reaction, such as skin irritation and headaches. The issue of equitable distribution of coronavirus vaccine is very sensitive for many countries. Therefore, from the very beginning, we urged our partners to take joint steps to curb the coronavirus infection. Since the development of Sputnik V, we managed to launch its production in a short space of time in Russia. To date, 2 more Russian vaccines against the new coronavirus infection have been registered. But we aimed at helping not only the Russian citizens, but other countries to fight this disease. As of now, more than 60 countries have registered our vaccine. Russia has agreed to ship more than 1 billion doses talk with the Chamber of Commerce and Industry. I'd like to talk at the summit not only about the trade, but also about the industry. Russia signed contracting manufacturing agreements with foreign partners in China, Egypt, the Republic of Korea, Turkey, Serbia, and Argentina, which have already launched production Sputnik V. According to Russian Direct Investment Fund General Director Kirill Dmitriev, with the Philippines, we are also in the final stage of negotiation, and we hope to conclude it shortly. We also hope that the Philippines LGU also will be actively involved in procurement and distribution of our vaccine. It was said that the Russian Federation and China were the first countries extended helping hands to the Philippines. On March 19, FDA granted emergency use authorization to Sputnik V. And on April 14, the Russian-Philippine contract to deliver 20 million doses this year was signed. With reference to the understanding reached during the phone call between our two leaders, Vladimir Putin and President Rodrigo Duterte, on April 13, we are expanding the pilot delivery of Sputnik, 15,000 doses, on May 1. The value of doses will be gradually increased every month. We hope that pandemic can be defeated by joint efforts through achieving herd immunity in all affected countries. As for in Russia, 20 million shots have been just administered. 20 million people first shot and 8 million people full doses respectively. In conclusion, I'd like to emphasize that Russia will continue to support and assist the government of the Philippines in achieving national goals relating to public health. And I do hope that the next summit will be called not Vaccine Summit, but Victory Summit, because we say Sputnik, we as for victory. Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you very much, Excellency Ambassador Pavlov. All that has transpired in the past year, one thing that's clear is ending the COVID-19 pandemic. And it takes a lot out of every country's resources, which is especially true here in the Philippines. With the World Bank Group support, the country has not been alone in this aspect. There's no better person to share the details of this partnership than the Senior Human Development Specialist of Global Practice in Health, Nutrition, and Population at World Bank Country Group. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome Dr. Sutayut Osoron Praso.
Ambassador Chua, Ambassador Yujuico, Mr. Denton, Dr. Lim, Mayor Isco Moreno, Secretary Galvez, Your Excellency Huang, Your Excellency Pavlov, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. On behalf of the World Bank Group and our country director, Mr. Ndiame Diop, both myself and Ronald Mutasa, our practice leader for human development, are delighted to be part of the vaccine summit being held today. The Philippines, like many other countries, has been hit hard by COVID-19, and the economic and social impacts of the pandemic have been substantial. A COVID-19 impact monitoring survey conducted in 2020 shows about 40% of households had suffered income losses, and estimates suggest that poverty has increased by 3 percentage points in the same year. Hence, the country's vaccination program, alongside testing, treatment, and improvements in its health systems, are critical to protecting lives and stimulating economic recovery. Please allow me to highlight a few important points related to the vaccine effort. First, through the Philippines COVID-19 Emergency Response Project additional financing, which has become effective in March this year, the World Bank commits $500 million to support the Philippines to implement its national deployment and vaccination plan and roll out vaccines at scale as a new important layer of protection to save lives, maintain livelihoods, and to allow Filipinos to gradually return to their jobs, their schools, and to be around their friends and families. The financing from the World Bank is meant to contribute to affordable and equitable access to vaccines and will support vaccine acquisition and deployment following the WHO fair allocation framework. Fair, broad, and fast access to effective and safe vaccines is vital to save lives and strengthen recovery. This project is the largest vaccine support package of the World Bank thus far, and is part of a $12 billion facility to help developing countries purchase vaccines, set up systems, and move quickly to vaccinate their people. Second, allow us to underscore that the vaccine deployment effort ahead of us is unprecedented and complex. This is the first time the world has had to deploy vaccines at this scale, with this level of urgency to cover these many individuals. The task will require robust systems, and there is no room for complacency. It will require all key partners, stakeholders, including the private sector, to work together and align their efforts under the leadership of the government to bring vaccines to all communities and ensure that they are delivered to people equitably. Third, timely access to vaccines across the world calls for global cooperation. We need strong partnerships within the country and across the region to combat this pandemic. To this end, the World Bank Group has been closely coordinating and will continue to work hand in hand with the Asian Development Bank, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, UNICEF, WHO, international partners, the private sector, and other partners to support the Philippines in its mission to bring vaccines to tens of millions of Filipinos within this year. Let me conclude by saying that at the bank, we are honored to be part of this effort, honored to be standing shoulder to shoulder with the Philippines and its partners in the government, the private sector, and civil societies and international partners in moving this effort forward to rebuild and to mount a resilient recovery. Thank you very much. Salamat po.
Thank you very much, Dr. Osoron Prasoff, for your information, productive and fruitful information about the World Bank's country group's assistance for the Philippines in in its sourcing of COVID-19 vaccines and other interventions needed in fighting the pandemic. Thank you. Also, thank you once again to the rest of our resource speakers from the government, diplomatic corps, and international organizations for enlightening our audience about ongoing COVID-19 vaccination efforts in the Philippines. We have been receiving questions here and inquiries from the major television station, but that are meant for the resource speakers. Unfortunately, we might not be able to work on this unless the resource speakers are still around. We will check with our secretariat. But as you know, there's a lot more that goes behind our indispensable battle against this pandemic. In the second part of the Vaccine Summit, Equitable Distribution and Safety, hosted by the International Chamber of Commerce, the Philippines, the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and the International Chamber of Commerce, we will be hearing ideas and experiences of the private sector and vaccine importers in the Philippines themselves. Before we proceed, in the spirit of Bayanihan, please feel free to share this Zoom video on your social media so that we can impart information to more Filipinos about the distribution and safety of COVID-19 vaccines. Now, let's hear what our panelists have to say about the topic of importation and distribution of COVID-19 vaccines in the country. Our first panelist will talk about the private sector's role in the importation of major vaccine brands. He founded the Philippine Center for Entrepreneurship, Go Negosyo, and is currently the Presidential Advisor on Entrepreneurship and the President and CEO of RFN Corporation. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to PA Joey Concepcion III. PA Joey.
Bobby, hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Bobby, and thank you to the Chamber for PCCI, ICCI for inviting me to speak with you today. Let me share with you my thoughts. Ever since the pandemic last year in March, when we had the lockdown for 2.5 months, basically my role as an advisor to the President on entrepreneurship focuses really on our micro and small entrepreneurs. The main goal is to really alleviate them from poverty, especially our micro entrepreneurs who are severely challenged in the normal way of doing business, especially when prior to the pandemic. So they were already challenged because of, I guess, the lack of capital, competition, demand, and many things. Now that the pandemic hit the Philippines last year, it created a lot of disruption in our economy. And many of our MSMEs are struggling because their working capital has been depleted. MFIs are also hit because they focus on a sector that is quite challenged. And the banks as well are more conservative in lending our entrepreneurs. So as we confront this pandemic, Go Negosyo started with 2 projects. Project ARC, which was there to create visibility. The first part of this war against COVID-19 was basically to create visibility. At that time, we relied on antibody test kits. We moved on and moved into antigen, and we built capacity on RT-PCR. Many of your chamber members have donated to our efforts in funding many government hospitals for PCR equipment that today, together with Red Cross, has allowed the country to have a much higher capacity in PCR testing. The challenge right now is more than just creating visibility. It is now a challenge toward really survival for many of our entrepreneurs. But the challenge really is to how do we now eliminate the virus? The war that we have against COVID-19 is now taken to its second stage. As we've seen, social distancing, wearing a face mask and face shields is not enough. It is enough for us to coexist with the virus, but for us to move forward and open the economy and have a balance. You know, the government, ITTF, has been having a struggle in balancing lives and livelihoods. And for us to use what we have right now, shields and social distancing, just allows us to survive. So we now, as early as October last year, we explored the idea of bringing vaccines. In fairness, Tessie with BDO, were the first to really talk to AstraZeneca. And when the idea materialized that AstraZeneca was offering a program on zero profit, they called our help. And so Gonegosyo created what we called a dose of hope. And that was the start of forming a tripartite agreement. Many people are wondering why a tripartite agreement? Because all these vaccines are under emergency use authority only. So the EUAs, basically, people wanted to be protected against suits. No? Like the pharmaceutical companies will never sell to the private sector if they were not properly indemnified in case these things happen. And that's why we formed the tripartite agreement. And with the efforts of Secretary Galvez, actually, the tripartite agreement happened. And today we have 17 million doses ordered by both the private sector and the LGU. So the dose of hope, the first part of that was launched last year on October, late October, and signed in November. And there were about 34 companies who purchased about 2.5 million doses at that time. And the amount of money that we took a huge risk because the government could not enter and buy AstraZeneca then because they didn't have MHRA approval, which is basically similar to the FDA approval. So the risk of losing your deposit was very high. But we took that risk, and fortunately, AstraZeneca got the MHRA approval, and these doses are arriving now on June this month. So, and that was followed by another batch that happened in January. Close to 400 companies participated there with a total order of close to 6 billion. And the LGUs, many of them wanted to join. We brought them in, and that's why it's about 17 million doses that will be arriving between June to the end of the year. We have donated half of what we purchased. So the private sector donated 50% of what we bought, for the very reason that they were magnanimous enough to allow us to enter this program, and we only paid $5 per dose. So that's less than 250 pesos. So we thought it was wise to donate to the government, in which we did. And today, the government in exchange has allowed us to take the doses first, and their donated doses, they will take it towards the end. So it allows now private sector to execute very fast. From that, we help Novavax, which is handled by Faberco, Kishore Himlani, who's the EUA holder, and of course, Unilab. And Gonegosyo, since the very start, has been the magnet for many private sector companies to approach us, and we funnel them to the different EUA holders. So Novavax, we've helped bring orders to both Faberco and Unilab. And we started to help also in a small way with Ricky Razon's Moderna, with consolidating orders for those who have ordered with us, basically AstraZeneca and Novavax. And lately, we are now working to bring in NDUA holders for this are Enrique Gonzalez and of course Ambica, two companies who have, and Enrique Gonzalez of IG Biotech has the EUA for Covaxin. The advantage of Covaxin, which is made in India, is an early arrival as early as June. So the strategy of the private sector is to really focus on vaccines because balancing lives and livelihoods are the most challenging thing to do at this point in time. It allows us to coexist. And you can see we open, we close, we open the economy. And it doesn't really help. So you see a lot of people struggling. Now, there is this window that I feel that the bulk of the vaccines arrived, not only AstraZeneca, Moderna, Novavax, hopefully in September, Covaxin, hopefully in June, and of course, the government order of the Russian vaccine, among others, are arriving. So these, it starts coming in June, and we know that the fourth quarter is a very strong fourth quarter. So now that we have a very clear timeline on most of these vaccines, the next is we need to have great execution and vaccine confidence. So Go Negosyo yesterday launched basically Let's Go Vacuna, which is a campaign of the private sector. Basically, over 1,000 companies have gone through our network. Will start to start working on the employees through video material, social media, and all of that, and show how safe these vaccines are. We only chose the best vaccines for our people, and unless we really get a higher turnout of people wanting to take the vaccine, we will not win this war. So, Sec Charlie and us, he has been with the military. We know what warfare is all about. And it's very important that our citizens have to take these vaccines because if they don't take it, then you will never achieve herd immunity. So the goal is, at least for NCR, we are able to achieve herd immunity before the end of the year, hopefully by December. And that's why the focus of all these arrivals of these vaccines are centered basically on NCR. And rest assured that we are here to do our best. And we're supported by many companies out there who, not in the rest of the world, I think it's the only Philippines buying our own vaccines. In fact, we're also paying for our own logistics. So we've used Zwelig as our implementing partner for both logistics and distribution. Moderna is using Zwelig, and Unilab is going to be with what do you call this, Novavax, and there'll be another logistics provider for. So all of these are paid by the private sector. So in other countries, the government pays for all of this, but in this case, the private sector felt for us to open the economy, we have to be a big part in this whole game. And the success of us winning the war relies on our ability to execute well and as fast as possible the vaccination of our employees. And we have to convince at least 80% at the very minimum of our employees to take the vaccine. Then we have a great chance of winning this battle against COVID-19. Then we can open up the economy. The fourth quarter is the perfect time for rebound because you've got basically election spending, Christmas spending, and of course the economic stimulus of the government coming in place. The banks will have a better picture of a light at the end of the tunnel. So they'll start again supporting and lending our MSMEs money, and things will start moving. And towards 2022, then we will have a much better year. So this is basically the strategy and the reason why the private sector is involved in buying the vaccines. Thank you.
Anyway, since thank you very much, PA Joey. Since I think he needs to leave in a few minutes, so we can take as there are some questions that were picked up from the participants, and in the course of our consultations and meetings, as they learned that PA Joey will be one of the panelists, you must have discussed already a part of what is supposed to be some questions, but for further giving some enlightenment, here is a question on what is a dose of hope program by Go Negosyo. That's one, no? And what is the status of your efforts in bringing the vaccines in the Philippines? Do you have any challenges encountered? And the last question is, assuming, PA Joey, assuming there are delays, did you pick up the first questions already, PA Joey?
Yeah, I got it. I got it. So,
okay, assuming, no, if you can just expound on those that were not properly picked up by the audience, maybe, and the surveys. Assuming there are delays in vaccine supply, do you have a backup plan? So these are the questions that.
Okay, but first, what is a dose of hope? Well, at that time with AstraZeneca, we were, and of course with Sec Charlie, we formed the first tripartite agreement. And that was, I felt the best way to give hope is basically in a dose of this vaccine. Because the solution to our pandemic really is not an economic, I mean, the economic problem is caused by a pandemic. The solution to our economic problem is a health solution. And the only health solution we have is the vaccine. So the first private sector purchase was with the help of AstraZeneca, who were generous enough to offer these vaccines at very low prices, which allowed us to donate to the government. And we were never forced, I'd like to clear that. Other vaccines are not required to, or they're not able to donate because the vaccines are much more expensive. Now, the dose of hope, what do? We don't sell vaccines. Go Negosyo is not into selling vaccines. What we do is we take the orders and we funnel it to, like, for example, in this case, AstraZeneca. So they book all these orders. We would consolidate small orders that cannot meet the minimum quantity. That's what we would do. And basically ensure that even these small entrepreneurs are able to access these vaccines. In the same manner, it was done with Moderna. So we help them consolidate small orders. In the case of Novavax, in the case of Covaxin, because of the time in being, we've started as early as October. So the private sector, their awareness is that Go Negosyo is helping source the vaccines. So we source it, we work with the EUA holders, and there are 4 of them, and we funnel the orders basically to them, and they take care of the full responsibility in the collection and all of that. And we just make sure that the private sector are well attended to. So that is a role. We have a number of people that are focused in helping take these orders and ensuring them that the payments are made to these respective groups. So that is our role. We create webinars. We do a lot of information, and we launched this new campaign on Let's Go Vacuna. So that's the first question. Are the vaccines going to be delayed? As of now, AstraZeneca has given their delivery schedules. With regards to Moderna, as we know from the different meetings, town hall meetings that they have, the schedules are getting a little clearer, but of course the arrivals are not as what we expected. They're over time until the end of the year. I think some people expected that these arrivals will be much earlier, but like many other vaccines, there are always delays. With regards to Novavax, Sec Charlie said it's arriving early, sometime June. Kishore Himlani, who is the head, and I'm sure they'll explain it, their EUA is still to be released, and their production should hopefully get started. And I don't know with the challenges in India today, because Covaxin is also made in India by Bharat. But again, the EUA holder is assuring that the 8 million doses, they are working to ensure that it will come within the third quarter. So that's all fingers crossed. But what I can say for certainty is that the AstraZeneca vaccines are surely to arrive without any delay anymore. Now, on the government side, they used the WHO through COVAX gave COVAX is a facility that a pool of vaccines, and the government only just pays 18%. The rest are all donated by WHO. Now, I think the Philippines has received over 500,000 doses, and that was already used for the basically fourth-timers and senior citizens. Their worry is that if COVAX does not deliver sometime May, what will happen to their doses? They need it at least by June, the second shot, because with AstraZeneca, you can the timeline on giving the second dose is after 8 weeks, so after 2 months. So that second month will happen towards June. Since Sec Galvez allowed us to take our donation first, and they will take, we will take our purchase first, and our donation will be back-ended. They requested and asked me if we can help them with 500,000 doses for those who took already their first dose. And of course, we said yes, we will support them. That is in the absent, if the vaccines of AstraZeneca and COVAX does not arrive on May or June. So we will help them, because these people who took the first dose must take their second dose at least on the 8th week. So basically that, Bobby, was there any other question?
The second question is, if you must have not clarified it, assuming there are delays in vaccine supply, do you have a backup plan? This question came from one of the participants.
No, for AstraZeneca, which is basically 6 million for the private sector already, and balance is 11 million for the LGU, that's very clear that there is no delay in that. That will be delivered all the way every month till the end of the year, maybe stretching a little bit to the January. With regards to Moderna, you have some deliveries in June, you'll have some deliveries every month, but the bulk will, I'm told, will happen a little bit later, no? But I am not, we're not in the driver's seat with Moderna. We just help them in consolidating. With Novavax, I'm sure they've been invited here. They'll have more clarity. The only issue there is that we have put a big order with them, close to 1 million, and people are hoping that will arrive towards the 3rd quarter of this year, no? And Mr. Himlani knows that he's the EUA holder, and I'm hoping that Secretary Galvez will be able to give more clarity there, no? Because right now they have just finished their phase 3 trials, and the EUA of Covax of Novavax is still wanting to be out. No? I mean, unlike Bharat, it already has a conditional EUA approval. No?
Okay, thank you very much, PA Joey, for that very insightful presentation and information about what Go Negosyo has been doing in the light of this COVID-19 pandemic. Maraming salamat, PA Joey. From Asia's leading healthcare service provider, she's here to discuss Yujuico Pharmaceutical Corporation's crucial role in the importation and distribution of major vaccine brands in the Philippines and in other countries. Join me in welcoming Yujuico Pharmaceutical Corporation's Chief Business Officer, Ms. Janet Jacuzalem. Ms. Janet, please.
Thank you, Paul. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to all the prestigious speakers. And congratulations to ICC and PCCI for the successful vaccine summit. Direct, if you could please share my charts. I'd like to take the first few seconds of this opportunity to discuss and introduce Yujuico Pharma. Yujuico Pharma has been operating in the Philippines for almost 100 years now, and our core business being the distribution of pharmaceutical products, medicines, and vaccines nationwide. Since our inception in the Philippines for almost 100 years now, our core business has expanded to 13 other countries in Asia. Today, we employ over 13,000 people, some of whom man our 76 warehouses across the region. 6 of these pharmaceutical-grade warehouses are in the Philippines, where we have the largest footprint. Today, we also engage with over 9.8 million users of our digital platforms in countries like the Philippines, Malaysia, and Thailand. Next, please. I would like to focus the next few minutes accorded to me on the supply chain management of vaccines. We all know that the process starts with procurement and ends when the vaccines are finally administered to the citizens. But what is important to note is the integration of processes within this chain, the manning by experts, and the automation and digitalization to make the whole process efficient. This is most important with the vaccination program that we are undertaking in view of its scale and complexity. Next, please. Moving to the warehousing requirements of the vaccines. While an important consideration, of course, is capacity and temperature requirements, but there are other considerations that are equally important. A pharma-grade warehouse requires redundancies and available backup of systems, temperature monitoring devices, and automation. Automation in temperature monitoring to trigger immediate corrections and avoid temperature excursions. Automation in the vaccine batch and lot number tracking, and automation in inventory management via first expiry and first out. Next, please. On delivery, again, ensuring 100% compliance to the temperature requirements of the vaccines is primordial, even when these are in transit to the vaccination sites. But expertise in this part of the supply chain allows for proper assessment on what method of delivery to apply that is most practical, efficient, and optimal. Next, please. Another key component of the supply chain management of the vaccines is ensuring that those that handle it have gained verifiable experience and that personnel have undergone the necessary training and accreditation. We operate in a VUCA world, a highly volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. In such an environment, we can only bank on expertise, experience, and a solid business continuity plan to enable the delivery of vaccines to where it is needed. Next, please. And finally, but definitely not the least of all, digitalization. We believe that starting from the master listing of vaccinees, to the scheduling, to the recording of the vaccination, and all the way to the tracking of adverse events, a vaccination program of this scale and complexity needs to be supported with a solid digitized system. In summary, I would like to end by stressing on the importance of bayanihan. A solid supply chain framework coupled with strong collaboration between stakeholders, we believe, will enable a successful national vaccination program. Collaboration between governments, between government agencies, between LGUs, between government and private, now more than ever is most important for our country to be able to achieve herd immunity through vaccination. In this light, Zulig Pharma continues to support the Philippine government in its objective of having a better Christmas in 2021. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, Ms. Janet Jacusalem. Very well-informed presentation about the logistics and the way the vaccines will be handled in its most safe condition. Our next panelist was a former Department of Health Program Manager for Emerging Infectious Diseases. To contribute her insights on how Faberco Life Sciences Incorporated, the distributor of the Covovax vaccine in the country, was able to facilitate partnerships and secure agreements with the Serum Institute of India and the Philippine government. We are delighted to have Faberco's Medical and Regulatory Affairs Director, Dr. Luning Ning Villa. Dr. Villa, please.
Thank you, Sir Bobby. Distinguished speakers, guests, and summit participants, good afternoon. Public health records and history tell us that epidemics or outbreaks of communicable diseases transmitted through droplets or airborne, mainly through the respiratory route, can be controlled in the fastest way, mainly through vaccination. Examples of these diseases are measles, influenza, meningococcal disease, pertussis, and diphtheria. Eradication of the much dreaded smallpox was also achieved through vaccination some 50 years ago. Similarly, the ultimate solution for stopping this pandemic of COVID-19 is through vaccination against the virus that causes COVID-19, the SARS-CoV-2. Our company, Faberco Life Sciences Incorporated, partners with reputable manufacturers that include Serum Institute of India, the world's largest manufacturer of vaccines, catering to at least 170 countries worldwide, to supply Covovax, which is Serum Institute has a license agreement with Novavax to the Philippines. Novavax is a biotechnical company that specializes on developing vaccines against severe infectious diseases, that specializes on respiratory diseases. So we are proud and confident that we were able to bridge the bridge. We were able to bridge Serum Institute with the Philippine government in making the supply of Covovax to the Philippines. And we are very proud and confident of Covovax. It has shown impressive results from the clinical trials. It has a high efficacy against the original and the emerging variants. In fact, this is the first vaccine that has very clear evidence in the clinical trials on the efficacy against UK and South Africa variants. It is also very important to note that Covovax is 100% protective against severe disease. And it has a very reassuring safety profile. It is very easy to administer because it's in a liquid formulation and requires regular vaccine storage temperature of 2 to 8 degrees centigrade. We anticipate that the EUA will be secured prior to the delivery of the vaccine, that based on our timelines, will start on the third quarter of this year. Bringing this vaccine toward the country is our contribution in preventing hospitalizations and deaths, to help allay people's fears, to get people back to work so we could move forward toward the recovery of our nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Luning Ning Villa. There are some questions that will be asked later on. Now, deviating a little, from our vaccine-related summit something, an alternative for the treatment of COVID-19. I would like to introduce a practicing integrative medical doctor who authored the book, Freedom from COVID-19 Now, Prevention and Cure at Hand. He will share with us today his ideas on the use of ivermectin as a prophylactic treatment for COVID-19. A medical officer of the Sampaloc Medicare's community and founder of the Concerned Doctors and Citizens of the Philippines, or CDC Philippines. May I introduce to you, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Alan Landrito.
Good afternoon to everyone. Now, we'd like to address the question, can ivermectin be an effective treatment against COVID-19? And if it can be, then what impact will it have on the vaccine? We may have been hearing a lot about ivermectin already, and our experience is showing that it's really helping a lot, in terms of prevention and treatment of COVID-19. Now, in my experience, I can say about 95% that I have given ivermectin in terms of prophylaxis or prevention. It really does work. Means if we give ivermectin to people, they on a regular basis, every 2 weeks, they don't get the COVID-19. They are really protected. So we are saying it can be a bridge, or it should be the bridge to getting the COVID-19 while we are still on the shortage. Especially in the Philippines, we have a shortage of the vaccine. We're not seeing we're going to get everyone vaccinated in the next 6 months. So while waiting for the vaccine, it can be a bridge. And we are hearing about some complications with the vaccine. Ivermectin can even be a safety net for the vaccine. With regards to its efficacy, I would say, in my experience, and even the experience of other doctors in other countries. Now, I would like to address also the question, can it be an effective alternative to the vaccine? I would not say so. But if we look into, vaccine is a different thing. It may be the ultimate solution, but treatment is another thing. In a natural course of a viral infection, person is infected with the virus, and then he may succumb to the disease, he may develop this, or he may mount an immune response on that disease, and thereafter, he will recover, and then he will get what you call a natural immunity. So that's immunity coming from the natural process. But the case will be different if a COVID-19 patient is taking ivermectin, or he's not yet a COVID-19, he's taking it for prevention. He's taking ivermectin, then he gets exposed to the virus. What happens is he may get a bit of the disease, or may not even, but then he may develop an immune response, and in the course of time, he may get a natural immunity. So if the question is can it be an alternative, maybe may not be wise, or it may be something to be explored. But I think if people are really getting the mild form of COVID-19 while taking ivermectin, or not getting COVID-19 at all, then we can opt to, just take ivermectin while still waiting for the vaccine. And yes, my answer is in terms of efficacy and safety, ivermectin is really perfect in the management of COVID-19. The health authorities will just have to see how it impacts on the vaccine. And I would say if we get the viral attenuated vaccine, attenuated virus form of vaccine like the Sinovac, then we are going to be preventing possible complication, which is called immune mitigated enhancement, that can happen months thereafter, such as what happened with the dengue vaccine, which happened in the Philippines in 2016. The children who died from that vaccine had previous exposure to the dengue pathogens. In the case of COVID-19 vaccine, if it's Sinovac, for example, an attenuated virus, and they had previous exposure to the COVID-19, they may get this complication. But if they're taking ivermectin, I believe ivermectin will even prevent that complication. So I was given only 3 minutes for my part, so maybe I can add more information when it comes to the question and answer portion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alan Landrito. I guess some of the supposed questions that are supposed to be asked of you later were already answered by you, but there are still some other questions that may be asked of you. So I think we will be having some more other questions from our participants and our other guests. Anyway, let's look at from the perspective of the private sector as far as ivermectin is concerned. I would like to introduce a business and export champion, taking us through other things we need to know about ivermectin. Let us meet the honorary chairman and director for CSR and treasurer of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and likewise the president of the Philippine Exporters Confederation and the Employers Confederation of the Philippines. A warm welcome to Dr. Sergio R. Ortiz Luis Jr. We commonly call him SOL. SOL, take it away.
Thank you, Bobby. But anyway, you told me that I was supposed to tell you why I got involved in the ivermectin issue. Well, just to give you a background, at the beginning of the pandemic, at the time of the lockdown, initial lockdown, I had close friends and relatives who got infected and were victims. And at the time, we know that the chances of surviving at the time, even is much lower than the chances of surviving it now. And at the time, what we hear from the Department of Health was stay at home, take a lot of sleep, eat vegetables, drink a lot of water, and take paracetamol. They don't even tell us what brand and how many milligrams. That's it. And so I did not wonder why hospitals, survival in hospitals at the time was very nil. And in spite of the fact that there were expensive medicines around, they were not being, they did not survive. So because obviously we did not know much about the COVID at the time, and everybody was just trying everybody was just trying whichever they can use. And then after a while, I received some Chinese medicines from some of my friends, Linhua, and all of them were using it apparently. And then I heard that there was a raid that was conducted in Fontana in Clark, and I was amazed with the effort, the length, and that they were trying. NBI was trying to arrest all those who got involved with this Linhua, I think. When I asked around, I found out that nobody really, none of the Chinese who were there, many of them were Togo, I think, could not go to the hospitals and did not know what to do. And it's not happy with just taking paracetamol. So what they know and what they trust from China, they brought in Chinese medicine, and they nobody got sick there. They survived, and then eventually it was not allowed also, and it was being pursued. But I guess after a while, most of the hospitals, especially the Chinese hospital, were using it. And now I think it's allowed. I don't know what is the real status. And then I heard of ivermectin. Ivermectin at the time was something that everybody seemed to know, and I was surprised why a lot of people are using it. And they were going on seminars that are always that the crowd was so many, the one who they're always closed. There were so many of them that were interested in it, and so I asked around, and I got a lot of feedbacks. I learned that 3,700,000 of this 3.7 billion of this was used for human already from the time for the last 30 years, and no cases of death or adverse reaction, except I think there were 4 out of the 3.7 billion that was being mentioned as adverse reaction, and so it was declared as one of the safest miracle drugs that there are, and I think the ones who invented it were even given a Nobel Prize for doing that. So it was, at that time, we're really talking already human for the last several years, decades. And now here comes in the Philippines. It was being used here for parasitical, I think, up to, I think Dr. Larmito had or whoever has a license up to 2018 that they did not renew. And so it was allowed for human. And eventually, after all then I heard the head of FDA in the radio and said, it is not possible to use because ivermectin for human is not available in the Philippines. And I was surprised because everybody's using, thousands are using it. And he says it's not available. Only for animal consumption is available here. Eventually, after a meeting, I think when there was already to have 1 million signatures, they changed the line. No, it is not allowed because it does not pass the proper standard. So and they were saying that they have to apply. So I guess Dr. Larmito applied, and I think that was a trap because to apply, we say we need it as yesterday, and I don't know how long before they can be given. And they want to be able to work short term. Obviously, it's a safe drug. Obviously, it can be used by human. So so eventually they change the law. Okay, we will allow certain pharmaceutical or hospitals to compound, and now there are 5, I think. But that is a very closely guarded secret who they are. I don't even know if there are 20 or 0. Why is it a closely guarded secret? There are 5 allowed already. Why? And then the instruction of the president was turned into really trying to erase the usage of ivermectin. How? The instruction of the president was, well, we must look at it, but we have to be careful that they are not fake drugs, or so order came out, arrest them, or take the license because either they're fake or they're for animals only, and therefore effectively nobody can sell it. And then the 5 secret hospitals who are doing it, we don't even know. So if you want to buy it, where do you get it? So effectively, they made it criminal to be able to use ivermectin, and yet it may be, even if the claim is only 20% true, will that 20% of those who might die that can use it worthwhile? And that is why the reason I think, why is it that with all the pressure, even possibly because people are asking, some people to resign. Why is it so important? When it is safe, nobody's asking it for the government to give it out or to authorize it or to, but what they say, if it's safe and doctors, and there are really doctors and lots of studies are available, why go to all the lengths? What is it so sacred about having it blacked that they go to the lengths of blacking it? Initially also, after all the pressures, they said, finally, we will have it clinically tested by DOST. Initially, before that, DOST was saying, we don't have to test it because there's a lot of trials already in the US, abroad. 22% of the countries involved in COVID are already using it. Several countries are even including it in their kit that they're distributing to their citizens, and several countries have declared it as to be used for COVID. Why are we thinking that we'll have to reinvent all these wheels? And then the OST say, oh, finally, I think because of the order of the president, they agreed they will do it. So they're trying to look for volunteers. I think the earliest they can start is June, and the earliest that they can finish it possibly is 6 months from June. That's the earliest. So effectively, they were able to block it using even the president instruction to do it, when in fact, we need it like yesterday. That is the reason they got involved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sergio Ortiz Luis Jr. There are actually a couple of questions here still related to your take on ivermectin and the vaccine, and also concerns with regards to the position of ECO. This will be asked of you later on. Thank you very much, SOL. Anyway, we are also fortunate to be joined by the co-founder of the Alliance for Improving Health Outcomes, a nonprofit group working to raise the profile of public health and develop a critical mass of public health professionals. To expound on the government's critical role in the pandemic, we're honored to have the Director for Health Promotion and Disease Prevention and Control of the Department of Health. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome Dr. Beverly Lorraine Ho. Doctor.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I thought this was a different summit because we were talking about a different intervention apart from vaccines. But probably let's just center ourselves back into the topic. So the COVID-19 pandemic has exposed inherent weaknesses in our healthcare system, particularly in the public health system, resulting from years of underinvestment. For many of us listening today who are fortunate enough to afford private care, this was not as apparent prior to pandemic because we were able to access healthcare services from the private market. But when the pandemic struck, inherent public health functions such as epidemiology, which allows us to do contact tracing, for example, track disease conditions, has showed that we didn't have a well-developed infrastructure. That said, we know that we need to rely on good evidence continuously in order to shape our decisions, whether they will be recommendations for the public or whether they will be services that will be paid for by the national government. All of these are going to be important because the public and the healthcare providers all would need guidance in terms of what interventions are evidence-based in order to make sure that we're not spending our money on things that don't work. And second of all, that we're not unduly asking people to trust interventions that actually will just give them a false sense of security. So that said, apart from the minimum public health standards, which has shown to work, vaccines are also shown to have worked, no? And with this, we know this from scientific information, and this is why the government has, as Secretary Galvez discussed, embarked on this grand vaccination plan for this year. And mind you, it's almost 35 times as big as a regular immunization program, which we do for infants, no, for babies. The unique thing, because of what has been mentioned a while ago as vaccine nationalism and vaccine apartheid, as has been labeled in some literature, because of this, the government had to work on a portfolio approach. And that means choosing around 7 to 8 brands of vaccine before we actually 7 to 8 brands of vaccine that we deal with, no, vaccine manufacturers, in order to make sure that we have those 140 million doses that we need. So where does the private sector come into this? No? I guess before I go into that, it's important to note that what makes a successful vaccination program is not just about the vaccine vial that everyone is talking about, but really the mechanism, how this is delivered. I've been seeing the comments of architect Palafox a while ago, and precisely, you know, the people who will do it and the system behind each of those vaccination, bringing that fluid from the vial to the arms of everyone, that's going to be the critical step in the next few months, making sure that we refine that protocol so that it gets more streamlined as we learn from the past few months of injecting almost 1.7 million Filipinos already. With that, it's also important to note that the vaccines will likely arrive in the next few months, but the challenge will continue to be overall health literacy and demand. No? Now we're seeing with the shortage of vaccines and with the surge, more people are raising their hands to say they want to be vaccinated. But when the vaccines do arrive in 20 million doses a month already, how can we make sure those that need to be vaccinated will be there? No? And for that, we do hope that each institution, PCCI, ICC, for example, can encourage all of your member organizations and their leaders to actually own this vaccine hesitancy problem. In that way, we can work with our HR departments in order to track which among our employees or subgroups of our employees who we need to convince more and shape their notions about vaccination. And then finally, we do get a lot of queries from many of our private sector counterparts or their employees asking, should they wait for the vaccine that they want, the brand that they want, because their company has already paid for it and they're not too sure about the vaccines that are currently available in the Philippines? Well, the answer to that is it really depends on your risk. We encourage you, and even our private sector partners encourage their employees, senior citizens, those with comorbids, to immediately take the vaccines that are available already. And we also want to emphasize it really depends on your risk. If you happen to be someone who can work from home all the time, who can isolate yourself and not really get exposed as much, perhaps it's fine to wait for it. But then if you're someone who lives in a multi-generational household, you live with kids who are not eligible to get vaccinated, and adults or elderly population who are vulnerable, and you're the ones who go in and out, then perhaps it might be more fruitful for you, or more beneficial to go out and get your shots already from your local government units. As a final word, I would like to assure everyone that we try as much as possible in the Department of Health to recommend only evidence-based interventions, looking not just in single or two types of studies, but really the totality of evidence. So there is a whole science to synthesizing evidence from the different studies. And at the end of the day, if you want to do whatever you want to do, and your doctor would want to be held liable for whatever they recommend to you, then that's always the patient's choice. But as a national authority in charge of in charge of making sure that the technical standards are there for your protection, then that's what we will be providing you and offering you. So maraming salamat po, and thank you for this opportunity to join all of you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Beverly Lorraine Ho. At this point, there are several questions that would need clarification and some other points and issues that will be asked of you later on, Dr. Ho. Our next panelist is also from the private sector. This afternoon, he will give updates and other details on the role of private hospitals in COVID-19 vaccination programs. Everyone, please welcome the Medical Director of the Chinese General Hospital and Medical Center. Let us welcome Dr. Samuel Ang. Dr. Sammy Ang.
Hi, good afternoon to everyone. I'd like to thank the PCC and ICC for inviting me. I kind of feel lost in the company of all these distinguished speakers, but I'll contribute my little share by sharing with you our experiences with the COVID in general and vaccines in particular. Now, I'm very happy to hear Dr. Ho. My first time to see her on TV, and I'm very happy to say that I'm talking about the physicians in our country and what's happening with ivermectin with Dr. Landrico, very, very vocal, and I respect his advocacy because it takes a lot of courage to come out against the government. But then you have on the other side, Dr. Beverly, who has to take the side of the government, taking care of the public health, the health of the entire nation. I do not expect FDA or DOH to just say, go ahead and give ivermectin and see what happens. But I think that this is a cautionary tale. The ivermectin story, and previous to that, the chloroquine story. This is a worldwide phenomenon. COVID-19 was a new disease just a year ago, and because there's so much demand from the public to do something, I think, and that's what happens. We have chloroquine now, and maybe ivermectin. I don't know yet. The jury is still out in the open, although there are so many studies, and I share the frustration of Mr. Ortiz, about why does the government take so long to approve a drug that's supposed to be very safe? And I've seen that because we take care of patients. We are in the front line. I'm in one of the big hospitals in Metro Manila, taking care of COVID. We expanded our beds from 80 to 220 or 250 now this year. And I agree with the previous statements that from Mr. Lapu saying that the COVID-19 treatment has improved a lot. Our mortality from COVID dropped from 4% to 2%. I think Beverly Hawk will confirm that later. But we are now better equipped. But then again, a lot of our countrymen have no access to this kind of tertiary care. So I don't blame them if they want to take ivermectin as a precaution. But again, the problem with ivermectin is you might give people this false sense of security, thinking that if they take ivermectin once a week or once every 2 weeks, that they will be able to protect themselves from the COVID. And I'd like to thank Dr. Landrico for clarifying that issue, because I think it's very important. You are an opinion maker, and a lot of people listen to you, Dr. Landrico. So I'm glad that you say that ivermectin may or may not help. is important. If you are an intelligent person, you take ivermectin and you know your body and you feel that you're getting worse from the COVID, you should be sensible enough to go to the hospital to talk to your doctors. I think that will be my message for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Samyang, for that very straightforward statements on your take about certain interventions. Anyway, I hope you can stay for some question and answers after this panel discussion. And ladies and gentlemen, last but not the least, also from the private sector, I would like to introduce the Director General of the International Chamber of Commerce, Philippines. With more than 20 years of experience in intellectual property, international labor affairs, and commerce, rounding up our panelists to discuss relevant issues related to the traceability of vaccines. Here is the chairman of GS1 Philippines Incorporated, commonly known as the Barcoding Council. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jesus B. Varela. Yes, please.
Pleasant afternoon to all. I would like to focus in this short statement I'm going to make on a particular issue that I hope both government and private sector will not forget and consider to give attention to, and that is the issue of substandard and counterfeit products and how to curb it. WHO recently published a policy paper on traceability of medical products. Said paper outlines the features of existing traceability systems and provides guidance on developing traceability regulation across the globe, as it puts forward a set of guiding principles that will assist member states in establishing systems depending on their needs, capacity, and resources. One common feature of successful traceability systems highlighted by WHO is the use of GS1 global standards. Governments are currently engaged in ensuring that vaccination programs meet expectations and demand. As the rollout began, demand for vaccines, including therapeutics and other health products used to prevent and treat symptoms, continue to rise. While counterfeit drugs have been a problem for decades, it is now at the forefront of issues that need to be addressed apart from major logistical challenges of vaccine storage and distribution. Combined with other public health interventions, we have put our faith in the deployment of COVID vaccines to reduce the incidence of infections and help end the global pandemic. However, with the challenges of equitable global access, are likely to become increasing global health problems. Case in fact, as early as March 2020 up to March 2021, there were reports of counterfeit and substandard COVID-19 vaccines from 28 countries. Unauthorized copies of Pfizer, BioNTech, Sinovac, Sinopharm, and Moderna were reported from 10 countries, namely Australia, Brazil, China, Italy, Japan, Malaysia, Mexico, Ukraine, USA, and the Philippines. Therefore, it is imperative that a traceability system promoted and used by no less than WHO, as well as World Customs Organization, be established to ensure the integrity of not only the sought-after vaccines, but every healthcare product in the supply chain. In 2015, the global healthcare industry adopted the use of the 2D data matrix to enable visibility of batch and lot, expiration date, and serial number for drugs and for medical devices. Global data standards such as GS1's Global Trade Item Number, together with its pertinent product attributes encoded on 2D barcode, has been adopted and used on regulated healthcare products by countless governments and regulatory agencies around the world. The list includes Argentina, Saudi Arabia, India, South Korea, Japan, Malaysia, USA, the European Union, to name a few. The vaccine manufacturers and other international pharma companies are likewise compliant with GS1 global standards. The Philippines would have been on board on this global milestone and initiative with our FDA Circular 2014-011, but the FDA put a moratorium on its implementation in 2016. And since that moratorium, the world has seen the adoption of global standards for product identification, data capture, data exchange to maximize global interoperability. Said circular would have required all applicants and holders of certificates of product registration to indicate a unique establishment identification number and unique global product identification number in the integrated application form. And no application would have been accepted by the agency without these identification numbers. It would have required that all regulated products have these unique identification numbers, including the batch and lot numbers and expiry dates, in a 2D barcode printed on its label, as it is currently done in the countries I just mentioned. It would have been a good start towards a system that would help the agencies of government fight counterfeit products in the country, and we would have been well on our way to successfully trace products to the supply chain, as it is a standardized way to identify products and establishments responsible for their manufacturing and or distribution. Identification standards across the supply chain is vital to the success of any traceability regulation, which is on the high demand globally now more than ever. Application of global standards interoperability, counterfeits, and enhance vigilance. Moreover, every business easily scan health products with their mobile phones to validate product information and attributes. I am taking this opportunity to call upon government and responsible agencies to lift the moratorium on this memorandum. It will help bring trust and integrity on our vaccination program, which will be with us for at least several years, as we ensure only authorized products, registered or approved, circulate the local supply chain and prevent the distribution and or dispensing of expired, recalled, substandard, and counterfeit products during these times and beyond. Maraming salamat po. You're on mute.
Thank you very much for that insightful presentation, Chairman Varela, and thank you for those updates that are needed for the protection of the COVID-19 vaccine control. At this moment, we will just have a few, because of time constraint. We'll be looking at the other important questions here that can be addressed to our panelists. So panelists, please stay for a few more minutes. Your kind indulgence is much appreciated, so that we will end this summit with a fruitful result as questions and inquiries coming from our participants. Thank you.